Hello and welcome to our brand new English topic for this term, as we are going to start looking at World War II. Okay, before we get started looking at World War II this term, I want you to take up your home learning books and create a little mind map and write down everything you think you know or everything you want to know about World War II. Do that now. Okay, so you might have written down a few little things. If not, you might have just done it in your mind. So let's look at a few things you possibly might have come up with. Although I don't actually know what you've come up with, I can assume you probably know a few things. Number one, the war lasts from 1939 to 1945. It involved lots of countries, including Great Britain, Germany, USA, Japan, Italy, France. Maybe you've got some others on there. It was all about stopping Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. You might have got that written on there. There were lots of battles. Dunkirk, Battle of Britain, Pearl Harbor, D-Day. You might have got a few of those written on there. Children were evacuated from the cities. You might have written that down. And there was the Blitz. You might not know what the Blitz is, but you know there was a Blitz. Now, a few of the questions you might want to know about, though, is why did it start? What was it about? Who are the Nazis? Who are we fighting? How did it end? Who was Winston Churchill? Who was Adolf Hitler? Why are all the pictures black and white? Why is it called World War II? Who won? Is it the Blitz? Now, you might have other questions. If you do have other questions, just email me them and I'll do my best to answer them. Or better yet, you could actually try and do a bit of research yourself around it. Now, the reason we're looking at World War II is because it's actually quite an important part of history. It's a part of history that actually has a big impact on our lives today, and it had a huge impact on the people that lived through it. The World War II actually lasted for 6 years. It involved 61 different countries and 1.7 billion people. That was 3/4 of the world's population back then. By the end of the war, 50 million people had actually lost their lives, and hundreds of millions of people were injured both physically and mentally. It's a huge part of our history and one that we really need to look at. However, before we start looking at World War II and doing lots of writing and topic work and research assignments around it, it's really important to understand why World War II actually started. So we're going to use this little video today just to go through a few little points as to discuss why World War II actually happened. Okay, to understand how the war started, it's important to understand what happened in Europe and the world in the years before. So we're going to look at a brief history of the lead up to World War II, 1918 to 1939. To start off with, we're going to start with not World War II, but in fact, World War I. 1914 to 1918 was World War I. World War I was actually known as the Great War because nobody ever thought there would ever be another war like it. It was an absolutely awful war. It was the war that gave the world the things such as the tank and poison gas and the machine gun and trench warfare, and millions of people were affected by it and hundreds of thousands of soldiers were killed. It was an absolutely terrible war. Now, although many people were affected by it, in the end, Germany did lose as they surrendered on the 11th of November 1918 to Great Britain, France and USA. The war, which was then called the Great War, had caused the deaths of millions of soldiers and civilians and had cost countries trillions of pounds to fight. From the point of view of the Allies, Germany, who had lost the war, was responsible for all the damage caused and had to somehow pay back the costs of the entire war. After the war, the Allies met with the leaders of Germany at the Palace of Versailles in France to negotiate how Germany should be punished for the war and how they would pay back the damages caused. As part of the treaty, the Allies banned Germany from having an army, an air force or a navy. That means they weren't allowed to have any planes, they weren't allowed to have any warships, they weren't allowed to have any men and soldiers, anything that essentially could cause any kind of threat to anyone around them. They were also ordered to pay the bill for the war in reparation payments. In other words, because they had lost, in the eyes of the Allies, the Germans had to pay back all of the other countries for all of the money they had spent. Additionally, large parts of Germany were taken away from Germany and given to the neighbouring countries of France and Poland to reduce the potential of future German aggression. Now, this does put Germany in a really strange situation. They've lost the war, they're then told they have to pay back everyone else, and they don't have much money anyway. Then they have huge chunks of their country taken away from them, and then told, you still need to pay back the bill. It was a bad situation. Now, Germany did try and pay back the reparation payments to the other countries. However, this did lead to a situation where the German economy was struggling massively, and it struggled all the way up to 1923. Now, in 1923, after the loss of the war, their loss of the land, and the cost of the reparation payments, Germany was already stripped of all of its wealth and money. This was made even worse after a chain reaction caused by Germany missing a reparation payment. The German Deutschmark, which was their money at the time, lost all its value overnight, with everything becoming millions of times more expensive. Now, for example, a loaf of bread went from costing 250 marks to costing 200 million marks. This is called hyperinflation. Now, you might see on this little picture here, these children at the side, they're building these blocks. These are not blocks of foam or massive German Lego. This is in fact money. These are all blocks of notes of money stacked together. These children are literally playing with millions and millions of Deutschmarks. All the money the German people now had was worthless, but they were still ordered to pay reparation payments by France, Great Britain and the USA. Many people in Germany were very angry and upset by the reparation payments. In their eyes, they were being unfairly punished for a war that they didn't start, by countries that were equally to blame for the war as they were. In their anger, many Germans turned to a leader and a political party that appeared to offer an answer to all their problems. The National Socialist Party, or the Nazi Party, and their leader Adolf Hitler convinced many Germans that the reason they were suffering was because there wasn't enough living space. They wrongly believed that the reason for this was that certain minority groups, Jews, immigrants and traveller communities for example, were holding Germany back from becoming a super race. Now, across Germany, the Nazis spread fear and hatred of the different minorities using posters, speeches and films to convince many Germans that the only way they could reach their super race potential was to remove minority groups and take back the living space that they had lost at the end of World War I at the Treaty of Versailles. Although many Germans knew the Nazis were wrong, sadly, enough Germans didn't. And in 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party were elected as the new leaders of Germany. Now, under the rule of the Nazis, millions of people in Germany, especially those in minority groups, were attacked, persecuted and put into things called labour camps, where they were forced to build new roads, farms and factories for the new Nazi Germany. The Nazis also began rearming the army in secret in preparation for taking back the land that was taken from them at the end of World War I by force. By 1939, the Nazis had a strong grip of power over Germany. They had forced millions of minority people into labour camps and in secret had killed thousands of Germans who stood up against or threatened Hitler and the Nazi power in Germany. After 6 years of rebuilding their army, the Nazis were ready to take back the land that they had lost and create a greater Germany for themselves. During this time, Great Britain and many other countries across the world condemned the Nazis for their action, but they didn't do a thing. In March 1939, after spending 6 years building up their army in secret, they invaded Czechoslovakia and were making further preparations to invade Poland. The British Prime Minister at the time, Neville Chamberlain, condemned the Nazis again and warned Hitler that Great Britain and France would declare war on Germany if they invaded Poland. However, in September 1939, 1.25 million German soldiers swept into Poland in a surprise attack. The Polish army fought heroically, but were quickly overwhelmed by the massive German army. In response, Great Britain and France both declared war on Germany. This was the beginning of World War II. Now, this was just a build-up to World War II, and we will look at more of the issues around what happened in World War II and look at the events and the battles and the situations that happened around the world. However, for this week, we're actually going to just start building a timeline that's going to help us structure what we know. So in your topic task this week, you are being challenged with creating a timeline of the events in the build-up to World War II. Now you can create this timeline in your home learning books, or you can create this timeline on a computer, or you can use an online software such as Canva or Prezi to actually create an interactive timeline. I'm going to leave it completely up to you. All I ask is that you build a creative and interesting timeline detailing all the events leading up to World War II. Now, we will add to this timeline as we learn more about World War II and the events that happened. However, this week, just focus on the build-up to it. Okay, so if you have any questions around this topic, please let me know. If you want any further information on World War II and you want to do a bit of your own research, I suggest you go to BBC Bitesize. There are a few links I've left in the timetable for this week. They have some fantastic videos talking about all the things that we're going to be looking at, as well as looking at a few of the other parts of World War II that we're going to start looking at this week, such as the Blitz. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye.